The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has officially ruled out the sale of the Port Harcourt Refining Company, reaffirming its commitment to completing high-grade rehabilitation and retention of the plant. Group Chief Executive Officer of NNPCL Limited, Bayo Ojulari, made the announcement during a company-wide town hall meeting at the NNPC Towers in Abuja, ending weeks of speculation over the future of the country's most prominent state-owned refining asset. It described selling the Port Harcourt Refinery as ill-advised and sub-commercial. A petroleum engineering expert and CEO at Energy Equilibrium, Professor Izielen Agbon, joins me now to put this lingering downstream crisis in proper perspective. It's a pleasure to welcome you once again, Prof. The NNPCL has described the sale as ill-advised and sub-commercial. What do you suppose he means? Because just weeks ago, he was saying something different.
Yes, thank you for having me. I think the NNPCL had two options. First, either to sell the refineries or do not sell it. And I think they've made the right decision not to sell it. That was the first stage, whether to sell or not to sell. If they had sold it, they would have suffered a grave loss, given all our investment in our 4 refineries. So it is the right decision not to sell. Once you decide not to sell, you are now left with how do you rehabilitate, turnaround maintenance, and how do you handle the future of the 4 refineries in order for you, for NNPCL to compete with Dangote Refinery. So they have 3 choices. Basically, they have some choices they can make, and they are taking a look at those 4 choices. One of the choices is to run it like they run the Nigerian energy, the liquefied Nigerian liquefied gas, which is to sell shares, not to sell the whole refinery, but to sell some shares to a private company. For instance, the Nigerian Energy has got Shell with 25% of the shares, Total with 15% of the shares, the Italians ENI with about 10% of the shares. So they can decide to sell shares to foreign refineries to help them run it. That's one option. Second option, which they tried to do last year, they can go and look for a management team. Just hire a management team, a private management team to help them run it. They've been trying to get a management team to take over the running of the refineries. The third option is for them to use what they did with OVH when they bought the Ondo downstream section. All the filling stations, they bought all the filling stations of OVH Energy Management, but they gave the running of downstream retail to this private company that used to belong to Ondo before, to run it for them. That's one option. The other option is to ask them to run it themselves, to ask themselves, if we have sold this thing to Dangote, what would Dangote have done? Dangote would have gone out, hired the best management it can get with experience in refinery all over the world, and get that management with targets to run the refineries. NNPCL is now a commercial company. It should go out there, hire the best management it can get, leave them to be totally autonomous with the right to hire and fire, and give them objectives. And give them, look, this is the amount of gross margin you can make for us every year. We want you to compete with Dangote. We want you to take over 60% of the Nigerian market in 5 years. That's your goal. If you don't do that in 5 years, we fire all of you and go out and hire other people and pay them with international pay.
I mean, I wanted you to actually give us these options and put it on the table. But then, as most ordinary Nigerians, we're sort of getting tired of the conversation around our refineries in the country. I mean, if these options have always been there, why are we seeming to fail? And I mean, the optics of it. Just 3 weeks ago, the same Mr. Ojulari said all options were on the table. What could have changed in 3 weeks? Is it that maybe this advice you're giving us is now on the table and wasn't reviewed then? How are we sure that in another 3 weeks, we won't be hearing another all options are on the table?
Well, all options are on the table means that the committee that the GCEO of NNPCL put together had not come to the initial decision. Like I told you, the first step of that decision process is, do we sell or don't we sell? If you say we are going to sell, then we say to who and how much. If you say do not sell, then we say, how do we repair and manage? So they've gone through the first step of the process in that 3 weeks. They've arrived at the initial decision not to sell. That is a decision mode. Now they are faced. If we don't sell, how do we repair and manage? That's the second leg of that decision-making process. So a decision-making process has to be step by step in order for you to evaluate all the options you have got, right? So in the past, we were not able to move because of two reasons. One, we ran our refinery like a bureaucracy, like if it were, we are working for government. Now, NNPCL is commercial. In the past, it was not commercial. There was a lot of interference. Secondly, there was an oil cabal that wanted to make sure that we keep importing and that our refinery never work. This cabal is very strong. In fact, when Dangote met this cabal, Dangote became shall we say, a comrade. He started shouting that the cabal was worse than the, according to him, drug mafia. That the oil mafia was worse than the drug mafia. This is Dangote pleading for the government to help it, pleading for Nigerians.
Yeah, but one would say, ironically, he was able to brave all of that to open his own refining plant. I mean, cabal or no cabal, he was able to break through. So why can't we do the same? I'll just chip in the question because of time. Given that the capacity of the Port Harcourt Refinery, with this level of foot dragging that we've seen so far, especially when it comes to transparency, do you feel that the NNPC can ensure that the facility operates at optimal its level, even at completion? Yes,
because right now we're talking about repairing the old refinery in Port Harcourt, which was just 60,000 barrels a day throughput. The bigger one with 200 and with 150,000 barrels a day throughput is still under repair, just like the Warri refinery and the Kaduna refinery were under repairs. When those things are completed, when those repairs are completed, the capacity will be at 90% or more capacity. And then we put in a management that will run it under international rules. And they'll be able to run it as a commercial entity with no political interference from the Senate or the House of Rep or the Ministry of Finance or the Ministry of Petroleum or even the federal government. If you have a commercial entity, you give them a target. If they don't meet the target, you change them and you fire them. But you don't go and micromanage them and interfere and make political decisions. So when you now work for for the refinery after it has been repaired, it will be like if you are working for Shell or Chevron. If you do not meet international standards, you'll be fired and moved away. There are a lot of Nigerians working in refineries all over the world with all the expertise. There are a lot of foreigners with expertise. We bring them in, we hire them, we pay them international wages, and if they don't do what we want, we fire them.
All right. In light of the company's recent probe over 210 trillion naira unaccounted funds, What mechanism would you advise be put in place to ensure that the NNPC's decision-making process is transparent and accountable? I know that's a big task.
I think that before I even comment on the 210 trillion naira unaccounted fund, is the Senate said they got that from the audit. The NNPCL have said, look, we are going to take a look at it and we are going to see whether we can explain what those funds are supposed to be. There is nothing like economically, there is nothing like unaccounted fund in an audited report. I don't know. It doesn't have any, that's just a terminology the Senate used. So I'd rather wait for the three-week response of the NNPCL to explain exactly what the auditor was, what were the comments of the auditor. What did the auditor say with respect to these 210 trillion naira? Are they really unaccounted for? Because unaccounted for does not mean that the funds were lost or stolen. It just means that the Senate do not understand or the auditor was not clear exactly how NNPC explained the use of those funds between 2017 and 2023. Now, if we find out that NNPC cannot explain the fund, somebody have to go to jail. We cannot run a commercial company and then funds are missing and nothing happens. So if we find out that something went wrong, the people have to be publicly held responsible. They have to be given their day in court and trial, and they should be punished if they are found guilty.
All right, sir.
So
I guess
right
that's
now,
a good.
The NNPC GCO said, I will explain. Let's see what kind of explanation he has got.
They certainly are taking their sweet time to come up with explanation. But, I mean, like you said, let's wait and see. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.